Hello again. More on the Dhammapada today, and the next section is called The Righteous. So, this is a section about the morally good, we could say. Somebody who's ethical. So it begins, a man is not just if he judges harshly. The wise man sees both sides and judges fairly. So just a word again about this use of the word man that happens an awful lot in the early Buddhist texts, in a lot of Buddhist texts. And of course it means mankind. The word mankind used to be, very common. But of course today it's really out of fashion because women can feel quite outraged by the term man. So that's something that we have to get over it, really. We have to think, okay, language has changed. Our expectations have changed. He's not just referring to men at all, but he's referring to mankind. In other words, women, men, and anything in between. So, a man is not just if he judges harshly. The wise man sees both sides and judges fairly. And we're living in times of black and white, aren't we? Things are either this way or they're that way. And we're not encouraged really to see both sides. Certainly the media doesn't encourage us to see both sides. And the consequence of that is, is hatred, because it sets one view against another instead of having a broader perspective, instead of seeing that things are much more complex than that. So we need to watch out for that we don't kind of take a stand, as it were, take a stand that supports our view. So the Buddha was a person, a being who had no views in the enlightened state. In a way, in the enlightened state, there are no views. And it doesn't mean there's no right or wrong. It means going beyond the personal stand we take, which means that we polarize with other people. And it's inevitable if we take a strong stand. And I can see that in myself. When I've got a view, I want others to support that view. And when I come up against others that don't have that view, I can feel something in me creating a barrier. So, more and more I look to notice, when am I holding a view that I can feel some tightness, some tension inside me that thinks that there's something right about that view, and that, in a way kicks against the opposite view or another view. So it's something that's really important to look out for when we judge, when we've got that judging mind going on. And we all have judging minds. We've all got prejudices that make us lean towards some people more than others, some ideas more than others, and against. And it's when we feel that tension against others. And of course that's why we're doing the Metta Bhavana. We're doing the Metta Bhavana to overcome all our fixed views and to open a much more loving heart that has a perspective that's broad, that's open, that's receptive. The next verse says, "He who judges wisely and considerately is called righteous." So if we judge with wisdom, it has this broad perspective. It sees that other people's views are to be considered just as much as our own. The next verse, verse 258, says, "A man is not wise because he has much to say. The wise man is he who is patient, fearless, and free from hatred." So that's how we can judge whether somebody's wise, whether they're really wise. Are they patient? Are they fearless? Are they free from hatred? So that's our benchmark. Patience. Patience, in a way, is a very good antidote, I think, to hatred. Because when we're patient, we are, we're much more open and tolerant. And that tolerance means that we're much less likely to fall into aversive states of mind. I know for myself that when I'm in an aversive mood, or when I have hatred arising in my mind, it's intolerant, it's holding on to a view, it's making us stand in a particular way that doesn't want to wait, that doesn't want to accept. So I can see, in a way, how patience is a very good antidote to patience is a very good antidote to hatred. And fearless. Yes, so often we're driven by petty fears about things that haven't yet happened, fears about what we don't know or what we don't understand. So when we understand deeply, there is no need for fear, because we're not trying to avoid anything then. So fear is a great avoidance. It's a closing down, isn't it? So to be fearless is to be free. We have a certain freedom when we're not driven by fear. So a man is not wise because he has much to say. So yeah, it's very easy, particularly I think, if we study the Dharma, to know a lot about the Dharma and talk about it, but actually, do we practice it? How do we practice it? Do we put the teachings into practice? So it's not enough just to be able to talk about the Dharma, we've got to live it. The next verse says, a man is not wise because he knows many verses. He who knows little of the law but lives it himself is called righteous. So that just emphasizes this point, doesn't it? You can learn a lot of verses of the Dhammapada, which I did at one time. I learnt the whole of the Dhammapada. But it took me many years of contemplating the Dharma, reflecting on the Dharma, and again, over the years I realised I'd go back to different verses and I'd see a lot more in them than I'd seen at first. And then I would be able, you can apply them much more deeply the more that you understand. He who knows little of the law but lives it himself is called righteous. So actually, if we just knew the first few verses of the Dhammapada, I reckon we could get enlightened. But only by applying them, only by really seeing into the depths of those verses. We haven't got to know loads. Yeah, the next verse really applies to me. Verse 260, a man is not elderly merely because his hair is grey. He may be old in years, but known as old in vain. So, we can't consider that somebody's wise just because they're aged. He is called an elder who lives truthfully, calmly, and with control. So those are the benchmarks for us. Truthful speech, truthful in body, speech and mind, calmly, so non-reactive, and with control, so with some kind of self-discipline. So, I mean, many of these verses, as I've said, is really aimed at monks or bhikkhus. A man is not righteous merely by wearing the yellow robe. How can the undisciplined man who is full of desires be righteous? So, yes, it doesn't mean anything just because somebody is in a yellow robe with a bald head and carrying a begging bowl. What's going on in the mind. So, yeah, in some of the Buddhist countries, people take to the robe or enter a monastery for just a short period of time. I know that happened a lot in Tibet, maybe still happens. But that's not a bad thing, to do it for a while. In fact, I was thinking a while ago that actually, there are a lot of young people today that are aimless, that don't know what to do with their lives. And I reckon, if when they left school, maybe at the age of 16 or 17, that if they had the opportunity perhaps to either enter a monastery or, funnily enough, the army, that actually I bet you that they'd gain a sense of direction in their lives. That may seem really strange from a Buddhist talking about entering the army, but I've talked about self-discipline before, and learning how to organise your life, how to learn something that's of value. I mean, not everybody would be able to go into a monastery. I'm thinking of young blokes who basically want a bit of action, and they could find that in the army. They could learn a trade. They could learn to get up in the morning, and to get fit and so on. And the discipline, they might not like it at first, but actually it's got very good benefits. And I think if people had that option, maybe if they were much more sensitive, and the idea of going into that kind of discipline that's in the army would be horrific to them, go into a monastery and learn that sort of discipline of contemplation, of quiet, of contentment, and so on. Anyway, that's probably enough controversial topic to end on. And let me know what you think. Okay, so bye for now.